Hello everyone, my name is Eva Dawson. This is Eva Therapeutic Wellbeing. If you are new to my channel or new to my information, I am an occupational therapist and I specialize in holistic health and well-being. I have an emphasis on women's health and holistic healing, and I also have a lot of gifts of medical intuition, and so a lot of patients I see, I'm able to receive information in regards to ailments or issues that they might be having in their body. And I would really love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel for updated information and new videos that I have coming out. So today I was asked to do a video on my top 5 favorite self-care strategies, and I did a poll on my Facebook page and my Instagram, and this kind of tended to be the top thing that people really wanted to talk about. I have done a video similar to this before, but I'm going to talk specifically about each strategy and why I suggest each of these things. So what exactly is self-care? So as an occupational therapist, one of my specialties is working with people on their daily self-care routines, finding what things in their life are their joy or their flow, and really helping infuse back things into their life that they've lost due to illness, injury. And sometimes when we think about like an occupational therapist, we think, oh, someone who's had a stroke or someone who's had a traumatic brain injury or some sort of like really severe ailment. But this can be for anybody. This could be a parent, a mom that's kind of worn down, that's kind of lost herself. I work with a lot of patients with those issues. I also see a lot of people who have had severe emotional traumas as well. And what we do as human beings when we have had a trauma or an ailment or an injury is we have a tendency just to stop doing or limiting any sort of self-care activity, and we should be doing the opposite. So self-care is putting yourself first, taking care of yourself. You cannot fill out of an empty cup. That is what I tell my clients every day when they come in, is what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing to help heal yourself? What kind of energy or effort are you putting in towards yourself every day? And these are things that we have a tendency just to put on hold when we have stress or things that come up in our life, like a trauma. We tend to put ourselves in the back seat instead of putting ourselves in the front seat like we should. So I'm going to talk today about my top 5 favorite self-care strategies that I give my patients, and then I'm going to kind of go into depth about each one. So the first self-care strategy that I really like to hone in on with my patients is listening to the messages of your body. So with a trauma, with an injury or an illness, we have a tendency to kind of tune out. We become very overwhelmed or in a state of overwhelm, and it's very difficult to listen to what we really need because we have a tendency to tune out. So what I work with people on is really tuning into their body and what is their body, what messages is your body sending you. So are you having pain in a certain part of your body? Are you tired? Are you hungry? If you're eating certain foods, are you feeling sick afterwards? A lot of times what we do is like if you feel sick after you have dairy, sometimes people just are like, oh well, I just don't do well with dairy, or I get a stomachache when I have dairy. So if your body is sending you a message that you feel sick after eating certain foods, it's really important that we listen to that message and that we follow through and put our body first. And your body is your vessel. And so if you're feeling sick after you're eating certain foods, if you are feeling exhausted and this is another thing I see people do all the time, is they're exhausted, they're tired, and they say, I just have to stay awake, I have to do all these things, I have to get all these things done. And what they do is they push themselves past the point of tiredness, which and I've done a video on sleeping before. So if you're doing this, I highly recommend that you go back and watch that video on strategies for sleep. So if you're pushing yourself past the point of tired, what you're doing is you're sending the opposite message to your body. Your body is saying, I'm tired, it's time to sleep, and you're saying, no, I've got to get this done, I've got to get this done. So your deep brain says, oh, well, she needs to do all this, so I'm just going to give her a little boost of adrenaline to keep her awake so that she can get her stuff done that she needs to get done. And then you try to go to sleep, and then you're up all night, you can't sleep, you're not deep sleeping, you wake up every hour, every 2 hours. And so if you're tired, it's really important that if you can do anything, is getting to bed at a decent time before you feel that brick that hits you where you're just like can't even keep your eyes closed. If that's happening to you during the day, it may be at your lunch break or maybe in the afternoon when you get home. If you can take a quick 15-30 minute power nap, there are some YouTube apps you can get that have like a timer that you can, and I can post them below if you'd like. There's some different apps that you can get that have like a really quiet alarm that slowly kind of wake you up out of a sleep so that you don't get that startledness. But it is really important that if you do take a nap that you don't oversleep, because you won't feel good after you do that. So I usually suggest to my clients, if they are going to sleep, that you do like a quarter of a sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So I usually say do a half of sleep cycle or a quarter of a sleep cycle for napping. But a nap is it's just medicine for the soul. So if you have a chance to nap, maybe over your lunch, if you have an hour lunch break and you can spend 15 minutes kind of doing a quick power nap or even half your lunch break doing that, it really helps to rejuvenate the body, just to slow yourself down and give your body a little break or a little shutdown. And then definitely going to sleep at night. So listening to the messages of your body, sleeping when you're tired, not eating foods that make you feel sick. If you have pains in your body, slowing down and resting. So if you're over exercising or if you're spending too much time exercising, your body will tell you that it's too much. If your body's feeling tight, if your body's feeling anxious, really tapping into yourself and listening to those messages and figuring out what your body is trying to tell you. And I can do a more specific video on listening to the messages of your body, but that would be self-care strategy number 1. So listening to the messages of your body. Start journaling, start writing down, my body feels this way when I eat these certain foods, or my body's really tired around this time of day, or when I do these sorts of activities, this makes me feel better, or these activities make me feel worse. So you can start kind of keeping track of what things are working for you and what things aren't. The second strategy that I usually recommend, and this goes hand in hand of what I was just saying, is meditation. So a lot of people get very intimidated by this, and I am a perfect example of meditation. Like, I used to be people would tell me, oh, you need to meditate, you need to meditate. We make this so much more complicated than it has to be. So meditation isn't like sitting on a pillow and saying Om. That isn't what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is spending some time breathing and quieting your brain. We make this way more complicated than it has to be. And people will have excuses. They'll say, I don't have time to meditate, or I don't have time to do that. There is no way that you don't have 5 minutes to 10 minutes, a couple times during your day where you can be mindful, sit in a quiet, comfortable place, and turn off your brain and just focusing on one thing. So focusing on your inhale and your exhale, or focusing on a word, or focusing on an image. All of those things help to put your brain into a different state of being, in a different wavelength. It helps to relax your sympathetic nervous system and helps to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps your digestion, it helps your state of rest, it helps the chemicals in your brain. Everything about meditation is good. So you're going to be able to tune into your body, you're going to be able to understand the messages of your body better, and you're going to have a more calm state of being. So make it a point, dedicate 5 minutes, even just 5 minutes to yourself every single day. You could do it when you wake up in the morning and set your intentions when you first wake up of how your day's going to go. You could do this over your lunch break. My favorite time to do this is in the evening before I go to sleep. It's kind of part of my routine. I climb into bed, I put on my favorite oils, I do some deep breathing, and then I just really kind of try to shut my mind down and get my body prepared for a good state of sleep. So that would be self-care strategy number 2. Self-care strategy number 3 this is a hard one, but it's learning to say no. And this is very, very hard for people, but boundaries and learning boundaries are one of your biggest bets to having a healthier life. And how do you do that? How do you say no? And what things do you say no to? So when you tap in and listen to the messages of your body, you can start to realize activities, people, or situations where you feel a lot of either negativity, you maybe feel you dread it, or you feel sick before you have to go. Any of those activities that you're feeling that way beforehand, you need to reevaluate who you're spending your time with, where you're going, and what you're doing. So this becomes super tough when this is like a job situation where you drive up and every single day you just absolutely dread going to work, you feel sick to your stomach, or say there's a toxic person at your work environment, or maybe you have a toxic boss. All of those things you need to take very seriously. There's a lot of research backing people that have toxic jobs and toxic work relationships, how that significantly affects your health. Basically, what you're doing is you're suppressing those messages in your body that are telling you that this is not a healthy situation for you to be in. And when we suppress and suppress and suppress those messages, eventually what's going to happen is your body is going to buck you, and you're going to end up very ill. So you're either going to have an emotional breakdown, a mental breakdown, or some sort of physical illness that is going to basically, your body, what it's doing is it's subconsciously removing you from that situation. So it's really important that you honor if you are feeling like someone is constantly like taking energy from you, they're constantly like say using you for advice, or if they're constantly asking you to help them and there isn't some sort of even energy exchange between you and that other person, then that person is taking energy from you. And that also can lead to feeling sick. So if you feel sick when you're around certain people, or there are certain situations that make you feel uncomfortable, it's very important that you either limit those situations. I highly recommend limiting those situations, or we can talk, or you can look back on some of my videos, my survival for empaths, about grounding and shielding before going into those kind of situations, which I'm going to talk about one of those strategies coming up next. So really learning to say no to people, it's very hard to say no to people, but once you start doing it and setting up and establishing those boundaries with people, you're going to be like, wow, I wish I would have done this a long time ago. You'll notice you have freed up energy. You'll feel better about going into certain situations. You'll start being a little bit more assertive with people, like, no, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. I just don't, and don't sit there and make a bunch of excuses. Just say, no, I'm not doing that today. Or no, you could say, no, I have other plans. You know, you can figure out a nice way to say these things to people that, and pretty soon what's going to happen is the people that were using you or getting things from you, they'll stop asking, because you'll start to establish those boundaries, and those people are going to fade away out of your life, which is honestly a blessing. So that would be self-care strategy number 3, and that would be setting and establishing boundaries and learning how to say no to people, which is really hard. So another situation would be like in a work situation. I see this a lot with my clients. They're really nice, and their boss knows that they are, and so their boss will come to them and say, I need you to do this and I need you to do that, and they'll just continue to load more and more. Does this sound familiar? More and more and more things onto their plate. And if you don't say no, and you're afraid to say no, right? Because that person is in a position of power, which that's where those very toxic situations get out of hand, because that person is using their power over you, maybe to have some of their work done. And you know those kind of situations. You've probably all been in those kind of situations. And so it's really important to say, nope, my plate is full. I have enough work on my plate. I cannot take on any more work. And just really starting to establish those boundaries with those people. And once you do, they'll know that you're not going to take on any more. And so that's one of the things I really work on with people, is figuring out who and which situations and where they can work on establishing some boundaries, so that there isn't people taking and stealing from them all the time. And you'll be amazed at how much better and how much energy that you feel once you kind of start breaking those cycles. So self-care strategy number 4 is something I just mentioned, and that is grounding, exposure to sunlight. This is kind of a multiple self-care, kind of cramming them all into one. So grounding, sunlight, and having time on the earth. So this is something that it's kind of like a lost art. People spending time outside. Like I remember being a kid and we would, as soon as we get home from school, we would be outside playing till the streetlights came on. But I have just recently read a study that kids are spending less time outside than inmates in a prison. They're spending less and less time outside at school. I'm really surprised sometimes that my kids will come home and they'll say, oh, we had indoor recess today. And I'm just like, wow, like I remember being a kid and we just bundled up and we went outside, and it's just so important to get outside and be in the sun and feel the earth and spend time on the earth. So there's actually an electrical exchange of energy. When you have negative energy in your body, the earth actually pulls that negative energy out of your body and diffuses it down into the earth. And so, it's not surprising that you feel super relaxed after you've been outside, after you've taken a walk and spent time in nature, after you've worked in your garden. If you spent time on the beach and you kind of feel your feet down in the sand, how good that feels. That is an actual energetic exchange. So the earth is pulling negative energy out of your body. And we don't do that anymore. We have cement covering everything. We wear, soles on our shoes. We don't go barefoot. We don't let kids go barefoot anymore outside. And so we are craving. Our bodies are craving, and we don't even know what we're missing because we are so detached from the earth. So really make time to spend time, if you can, say on your lunch break, instead of just sitting at your desk. Even if it's chilly or if it's kind of gloomy outside, even if you can get outside and get some fresh air, take a couple laps around your building. If you have a nice little grassy spot, I like to do this at my lunch. I go outside, I take my tea outside, and I sit on the grass. People probably think I'm nuts, but I don't care because it makes me feel so much better if I take some time out of my day and sit out in the sun and really just take time to feel myself on the earth. In the winter months, this becomes a little bit more difficult. Obviously, if you live in a nice Florida or a nicer state, I live in Nebraska, so we have some pretty harsh winters. So I have found for myself that eating earth type vegetables, like root type vegetables like carrots, beets, some people don't like beets, I do, drinking root type vegetables like chicory root or turmeric, something that is from the earth really helps to ground the body. Also, chocolate is really good for grounding the body. Also too, if in the winter months, if you can't get outside and you can't ground, having plants in your office or plants around your home is a really good way to get that sense of earth. Sun lamps are also a really good strategy. If you have never used a sun lamp before, it's really important to expose yourself to the sunlight in the morning hours before noon, and just getting that exposure to the sunlight in your eyes really helps to normalize those rhythmic patterns in your brain for sleep and wake cycles, especially with this time change and things like that. Another thing you can do to ground in the wintertime is Epsom salt baths. Or salt baths. You can use Himalayan salt, you can use Epsom salt, essential oils to really get your body immersed in that water. Really helps to diffuse that negative energy out of your body, help you feel less anxious, just really help calm and soothe the body, and just really make you feel like more grounded and more on the earth. So that would be strategy number 4, grounding, sunlight, nature. Get in your bathtub, utilize that thing as much as you can. So that's strategy number 4. Strategy number 5, and this is something as an occupational therapist that I stress to my patients, and I probably should do just a separate video just on this, but finding your joy. I know this sounds silly, and I know this sounds maybe to some people like they don't have time to do hobbies or fun activities, but there is something magical that happens in your brain when you are in a state of flow. And you're asking, what is flow? Well, flow is the time when things that you're doing feel absolutely timeless. You look at your watch and you're like, wow, 2 hours went by and it feels like like it was like 10 minutes. So what activities are you doing in your life that make you feel that way? Very, very few. And what do we do when we get stressed? What do we do when we have a trauma? What do we do when we have an illness or an injury? We stop doing all of our flow state activities. When you are in a state of flow, your brain is almost in a meditative state. It puts your brain into a different capacity. And this is when you're going to be your most creative. This is when you're going to feel your most alive. And when we are struggling in our life, this is absolutely the first thing that we shut down is our flow state and our fun activities. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend, as self-care strategy number 5, is getting out your journal and writing down your top 5 joyful, fun, hobby activities where you feel the most alive or the most in a flow state. And really think about how you can incorporate those activities into your daily life, whether that be, if I know people are busy and I know people have demanding jobs and kids and all of those things, but if you're not taking time out for yourself, then you cannot be the best person that you are meant to be for your kids, for your family, for your job, if you are not filling up your cup first. It is very, very important that you continue to find those joyful activities, those hobbies that you love. That is probably the number one thing that you can do to amplify or improve the energy of your life. If you are in a joyful state, all of those other negative energies, all the anxiety, all the traumas, all those other things, they kind of just melt and disappear. And as we become more joyful, we start to attract more joyful and more joyful activities to us. And the higher and the better we feel, the more we attract those better and higher vibrational people in situations into our life. So if you really want to make a shift in your life and you really want to make a change, I would highly recommend that you find time for joyful activities in your daily life. So quickly, I just want to recap the top 5 self-care strategies. Number 1, listening to the messages of your body, paying attention to your body, listening to what it has to say. Meditate. Taking time to meditate throughout the day, even if it's just 5 minutes, is really important for changing how your brain works and changing your stress levels. Number 3, learning to say no and setting and establishing boundaries. Number 4, earthing, grounding, sunlight, spending time on the earth. And number 5 is finding your joy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you for supporting my channel. Please like and subscribe and share these videos if you appreciate them with other people. Thank you so much for your time today. I will be putting some of this information in the description box below, and I will put some information on the light box and some other really good strategies that I like for meditation. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great day.